Today, we're talking about why most people who try AI for content end up with output that sounds nothing like them, and the system that I've built to fix that. This video builds on what we discussed about the content operating system in the previous video. So, if you haven't watched it, I'd urge you guys to go and watch it first before continuing with this one. So here's the assumption that I wanted to challenge. If AI output sounds generic and off-brand, the tool has to be a problem, right? Majority of the people think like that, and they might say that they'll need a better prompt or a different model or different context, and that could be correct at times, but it could also be wrong. AI doesn't make your content generic. That content gets generated usually when you give it a topic and nothing else, right? Expecting it to figure out how you think. Without a documented system underneath it, every output that it defaults to is the average of everything the model has ever been trained on. And that's exactly why your content sounds generic and not like you. My name is Atharva, and I have spent the last decade in content marketing, gaining 35 million views through writing. And having tested different models and styles in the last 2 years, here's what I've realized. Consistent output comes from two different things. One is architecture, and the other is right frameworks. So, tools have got nothing to do with this. So you can integrate the architecture and the right frameworks into what I call the content operating system, which is an automated machine that runs on Cloud Code. And it has basically four components that take about 6 hours of weekly content work off your plate. And you can see them here. The first one is research system. The second is brand voice system. The third is writing system, and the fourth is design system. So let's get into it. So let me start with point one, that is the research system, because this is where most people get the first step completely wrong. So when you ask most people how they come up with content ideas, here's the answers that you'll get. They'll basically go to a competitor's page and then try to track it and just basically emulate the best things that are working for them, or they will just go to chat GPT and put in a basic prompt and get ideas out of there. Now, these are not completely wrong research methods, but here's the one thing that they lack. They basically tell you what is currently working in your niche, but they will not give you a complete idea of what exactly is it that your audience wants. And if you are someone who's trying to make revenue out of content, that is something you just cannot miss out on, because unless and until you are completely satisfying your ideal target audience and the doubts they have, you are not going to make revenue out of your content. So, a research system is something that groups four different research methods together, and each of these methods will answer one single and simple question. Now, the first method is called competitor analysis, and this is exactly what we discussed a few seconds ago, right? This research method will map what's already working in your niche by analyzing your competitors, their topics, their hook structures, titles, formats, etc. Now, this is a very useful tool or a very useful method, but it is just a starting point, and you cannot rely on it completely as the whole strategy, because your audience is asking for much more, and you need to know that before you can say that competitor analysis is just everything that you need. So the second method is called the gap analyzer, and if you have surfed through your competitors videos, you might have seen a lot of comments that are asking questions but are not answered by that particular person. And this is exactly where you can jump in, extract all those comments from the comment section, and basically make content on that. This is not just limited to your competitors. You can also do this for your particular content pieces. Like if you are running a YouTube channel or an Instagram account, you can just extract all the questions that the people are asking and then start making content on that. So it basically works both ways. The third research method is called the social listener method. And before I get into the deets with this one, I just want to explain exactly why this research is necessary. You see, majority of the content creators or strategists out there explaining how to create a content strategy are just asking you to go out and rip off the best content of your competitors and just create content around it by adding something of value that right? And as I've said earlier, that is okay, but that's not where you should just stop, because if your main aim is to generate revenue, to generate clients, social listener is really necessary, because what it will do is it will listen to the live conversations about a particular topic on X and Reddit, and it will help you extract those questions and those problems, and then you can use that insight to create content around it which will resonate with the audience. And the better you resonate with your audience, the better you know their problems, the better you create precise content around it, that is when people are going to trust you as an authority and they would want to work with you, right? So this agent basically scans X and Reddit for live conversations in your niche. And also you have to understand that X and Reddit are basically centers where majority of the latest trends are being discussed. So in a way you're also tapping into the trends. So it's like you're just killing two birds in one stone or something like that. Next we have is the question analyzer research agent. Now, before I get into this, you have to understand exactly why this research agent is necessary. In the previous one, we saw how X and Reddit are having live conversations of your audience. They are hosting those conversations, right? But are those two platforms the only ones where your audience will go to when they have a particular problem? Absolutely not, right? Because the most common behavior of any user in this world when he or she faces a particular problem is they will just switch on Google Chrome, go to Google and ask that question, right? And that's precisely why Google becomes the largest bank of such valuable questions in the whole wide world. And you have to leverage that bank of questions for specifically your audience so that you can create good content. And that's precisely what the question analyzer does. It will just extract the people also ask questions, the questions that are being displayed under that people also ask section on Google, you must have seen. So it will extract these questions, and it is necessary to answer these questions because each of these questions is tied to real search behavior, right? And once you create content around these questions, they can also rank on Google and bring you traffic for the long term, which can, further convert into clients. So together, these four modes cover every angle, right? What's working, what's missing, what's being discussed, and what's being searched. Now, that's a process that typically takes you 3 to 4 hours every week if you do it manually. But the research agent is something that will handle it in literally under 5 minutes. And once you have the right ideas to create content around, the next challenge is to make sure that the content sounds just like you have written it yourself. And this is where most of the AI content systems completely fall apart. Now, the next we have is the brand voice system, and that is the most important component in the entire content operating system because it is what addresses this problem of generic content. Everything else depends on it working correctly. Most people who've tried AI for content have hit the same wall, right? They'll give the tool a topic, they get back something that's polished and readable and completely unlike them, right? And it doesn't use the words they would use, it doesn't explain the way they would explain things, and it sounds like a complete stranger wrote it. And they're right, because in a sense, that's exactly what has happened. See, the reason why this keeps happening isn't because the AI model is bad, but it is because nobody gave it the information it needed to sound like you in the first place. And you just can't like directly ask AI to sound like you because if it doesn't have a documented brand voice, then just as I said previously in this video, the model will default to the average of everything that it has particularly been trained on. And that could be like a blend of a million of different writing styles, tones, and formats, right? So when you get the result, the content will definitely sound like a generic content or something that you haven't written in the first place. Now, the brand voice system is something that will solve this by extracting exactly what the model needs to know about you before it writes a single word on your behalf. It captures your vocabulary, the specific words and phrases you use, and the ones you would never say. It documents your conversation patterns, like how you open an argument, how you move between ideas, and how you land on a point. It will also capture your sentence structure, your preferred way of explaining a complex concept, and your typical tone for different types of content. All of that gets documented in a format that gets loaded into the system before any content is created. So when the brand voice system is placed, the out is completely different and it just sounds like you, at least 90% of it, right? The remaining 10% could be, your review, which comes down to checking the nuance, the accuracy, and the details that you would know, right? But the heavy lifting, that is already done. So Now you have the right ideas going in and the right voice encoded in the system. But there's a third layer most people will miss, and it's what determines whether the actual content structure will hold up properly. And this is exactly where the writing system comes in, right? It is a combination of frameworks and examples built specifically for each platform and content format that you create for. Now, platform frameworks are important because every format has a structure that works. Every content format, like be it an Instagram script or a LinkedIn post or a YouTube script, each one of them will follow a completely different formula as compared to another. And that's precisely why you need frameworks, because they will ensure that the AI model doesn't keep guessing what shape the content should take. Now, everyone knows that you need to give examples to AI models to help them understand exactly the kind of output that you're expecting. And one of the biggest mistakes that I have seen people make is majority of them will just give good examples to the AI models, but they'll completely skip the bad ones. And that is exactly why things go wrong, because if you are not completing this loop of good and bad examples, the output that AI gives you could, skew from different levels, from one level to another. And that's precisely why it is essential to give AI models bad examples equally well. When you only show AI what good looks like, it will learn to pattern match against those examples. But here's the problem: it doesn't know what failure means according to you. It could be, overused structures, overused words, or flat transitions, or phrases that just make content sound bland rather than interesting. And when you add bad examples alongside the good ones and explain specifically what makes them bad, the model now knows exactly what to avoid. The boundary is just as important as the target. It's the difference between the content that's technically correct and content that's actually sharp in nature. Now, one important thing to understand is that the writing system also improves over time. So it's not like you just build an entire writing system and give it a prompt and you'll get a perfect output at the very first instance, right? Because there's going to be a lot of back and forth, changes in decisions on how you judge content and how AI actually understands your style. And when the use is prolonged, like when you are using that writing system daily, definitely you will see a noticeable improvement in the kind of content that AI will create, and it will be much more in alignment with how you actually write content yourself. All right. So at this point, you have research, voice, and writing all working together, right? The last component now is the one that closes this entire loop of the content OS. And it is probably one most people will always forget to count when they are calculating how long content creation actually takes them. It is called the design system. So when people think about how long content takes them, they will not count the designing time majority of the times, right? The point is, you need to create a lot of social media creatives or carousels or landing pages, and that requires as much amount of energy, especially if you're working alone and if you're not hiring a designer. So this is exactly where the design system helps you create that visual content as fast as possible. So the design system basically needs a brand guidelines document to function really well, and this document should have everything that is visually related to your brand, like fonts, colors, visual style, and every other asset that makes your brand feel like you. So once this document exists, the system can produce presentations for your YouTube videos, carousels for LinkedIn and Instagram accounts, and landing pages for lead magnets as well. And you don't need to open a design tool for this, because AI will take care of that completely, provided the brand guidelines document is really perfect. So in a way, the brand guidelines document does the same job for design that the brand voice document does for your writing. It gives the system the specific parameters it needs to produce something that looks on brand and real. That's the detail most users miss when they try to use AI for design. They prompt a tool without giving it the foundation it needs and get back something that looks polished but really off brand. Now, the document is what will make that actual difference. All right. So that's how the entire content operating system looks like. And to recap, you have the research system, which will tell you what's working, what's missing, what's discussed, and what is being searched across the internet. And then you have the brand voice system, which will capture your vocabulary, patterns, tone, and structure. And encode it into the AI model so that the model writes just like you do. Then you have the writing system that will use proper frameworks plus good and bad examples to sharpen your writing and to get you the output that you are exactly expecting out of the model. And then at the end, you have the design system that will produce on brand visual assets using a guidelines doc so that you don't have to design all these assets manually. So together, that's how the architecture behind a proper content operating system looks like. And the result is like you can save anywhere around 6 hours across every week when you're sitting down to create content, because there's a proper system running at the backend that maintains your voice, your standards, and your brand consistently every week. So your manual effort is definitely halved. So that's it for this one. And if you want to know what kind of systems should you be installing in your daily workflows as a coach or as a founder, I've created a scorecard that will help you identify that, and it is placed in the description, the link to it, so you can access it from there. And if you found this video useful, make sure you watch the next one, because that is where I will be discussing the lead gen operating system in detail. See you then.